You just walked into a dark room. Your hand is already reaching for the light switch before you've even thought about it. Something at the back of your skull, something old and quiet and very, very fast, told you to find the light before anything else found you. You didn't decide to do that. You just did it. Here's what's strange. There is nobody in that room. There was never anybody in that room. You live alone, or your family is asleep, or you are standing in your own kitchen at 2 in the morning getting a glass of water. You know this. And yet something in you is convinced on a level below words that you are not alone. That feeling has a name. It has a mechanism. And once you understand where it came from, you will never be able to unsee it, because it is running in the background of almost every moment of your waking life. It is not a glitch. It is not anxiety. It is one of the oldest survival systems your ancestors ever built, and it is still fully active inside you right now. Let's go back, far back. Picture your earliest ancestors, not quite modern humans, but close enough. They are living in open woodland and grassland on the African savanna, roughly 100,000 years ago. They have fire, but only sometimes. They have numbers, but not always. What they have, constantly and without exception, is predators. Lions, leopards, hyenas, snakes in the grass, crocodiles at the waterline, and, perhaps most dangerous of all, other groups of humans who might want what this group has. Every single day was a risk assessment exercise. And the single most costly mistake you could make was to miss a predator that was already watching you. Think about what that means. If you assumed you were safe and you were wrong, you were dead. If you assumed you were being watched and you were wrong, nothing happened. You wasted a little energy. You felt a little scared. You moved on. The cost of a false alarm was almost zero. The cost of missing a real threat was everything. So your ancestors evolved to err wildly, aggressively, completely on the side of seeing watchers that weren't there. Better to spin around 50 times at a sound that turned out to be wind than to ignore the one time it was something with teeth. This is what psychologists call hyperactive agency detection, and you inherited every bit of it. The researcher who gave this idea its sharpest form was anthropologist Pascal Boyer. Boyer spent years studying how human minds construct invisible agents, watchers, spirits, presences, and his conclusion was blunt. Your brain is not a neutral observation machine. It is a threat detection system that runs hot. It sees agents everywhere because in the ancestral environment, seeing too many was always safer than seeing too few. But it goes deeper than just predators. Your ancestors did not survive alone. This is the part that most people miss. The savanna was not a place where rugged individuals thrived in isolation. The data from every hunter-gatherer society ever studied shows the same thing. Humans who got cut off from their group died. Not sometimes. Almost always. Being part of a group meant food, warmth, defense, and mating. Being excluded from a group was functionally a death sentence, which means your brain evolved to be obsessively, constantly, almost neurotically aware of one question above all others. What are the people around me thinking about me? Not just are they watching me, but what do they see? What are they judging? What am I doing that might get me pushed out? Psychologist Nicholas Epley at the University of Chicago has spent his career studying how humans perceive minds in other things, a process he calls mentalizing. His research found that the human brain has an entire dedicated network, the default mode network, that activates specifically when you are thinking about other minds, about what others want, about what others see, about whether you are being watched and evaluated. And here's the part that should stop you cold. This network is on by default. It does not switch off when you are alone. It does not power down when you close the door. It keeps running quietly in the background, asking the same ancient question on loop. Is anyone watching me right now? This is why you behave differently when you think a camera might be present. This is why you straighten your posture in a window reflection. This is why you feel a prickle on the back of your neck in an empty corridor. The system is not checking whether a camera is actually there. It is checking for the possibility of a watcher, and possibility is enough to change your behavior. In 2006, researchers Melissa Bateson, Daniel Nettle, And Gilbert Roberts ran a now famous study at Newcastle University. They set up an honesty box in a university common room where people paid for their own tea and coffee. Above the box, they hung a small printed image. Nothing elaborate, just a pair of eyes looking forward. No face, no body, just eyes. Payments into the honesty box nearly tripled. Nobody was watching. There was no camera, there was no person. There were two ink circles on a piece of paper, and the ancient watching detection system in every person who walked past that box fired up as if those eyes were real, evaluated the situation, and adjusted behavior accordingly. This is how deep it goes. It also explains something that has puzzled people for centuries across almost every culture on Earth: the near universal belief in invisible watchers, gods, spirits, ancestors, guardian figures, the dead who never quite leave. Anthropologist Jesse Bering at the University of Otago studied this extensively and proposed something that made a lot of people uncomfortable: that the human tendency to believe in supernatural watchers is not a cultural accident. It is a byproduct of the same hyperactive agency detection system. Your brain is so primed to detect watchers that it populates empty space with them. When there is no obvious source for the feeling of being observed, your mind does not conclude there is no watcher. It concludes the watcher is invisible. This is why the sensation of a ghostly presence feels so similar across vastly different cultures, different centuries, different continents. The mechanism is the same. The hardware is identical. The feeling of being watched when nobody is there is not a malfunction. It is the system working exactly as it was designed. And there is one last layer to this. Social neuroscientist Michael Graziano at Princeton University has proposed that consciousness itself, the feeling of being a self, of being aware, may have evolved in large part to model other minds, to simulate what others see, to predict how others will respond. In other words, you became aware of yourself, in part because you needed to see yourself through the eyes of watchers. Your inner voice, that running commentary in your head, is partly a social organ. It is simulating an audience even when the room is empty. It is rehearsing what you will say, rerunning what you already said, imagining how it landed, adjusting the version of you that walks into the next room. You are always performing for a watcher, even when you are completely alone. Sit with that for a moment. The next time you walk into a dark room and feel that flicker at the base of your skull, that ancient, wordless certainty that something is in there with you, you will know what it is. Not a ghost, not paranoia, not weakness. It is 100,000 years of survival speaking, reminding you that the cost of missing a watcher was always too high. And so you feel watched. And so you look. And so you are here, still alive, still looking, still asking the question your ancestors never stopped asking. You just walked into a dark room, and something in you already knew to check.